In 1864, the largest Confederate encampment in Florida was right here in Camp Milton, which is just outside of Jacksonville. And in fact, almost 8,000 Confederate soldiers would be camped here, and they would establish some of these field fortifications here. So today we're going to check out the grounds of Camp Milton and hopefully learn a thing or two about the Civil War in Northeast Florida. Now, Camp Milton was abandoned a few times by the Confederate forces, but after the Battle of Olustee, which is about another hour west of this location, near just outside of Lake City, it was an overwhelming Confederate victory. But after that battle, the Union forces would retreat back to Jacksonville. The Confederate forces would slowly tail them, and then they would retake this position of Camp Milton. And the Confederates manning this position helped keep the Union forces in Jacksonville for almost the whole duration of the war. It wasn't until the end of the American Civil War when the Confederates would abandon this position because manpower was becoming so limited for them that the Union forces would retake this position. And just a board giving pretty much an overview of the park here and a timeline of the Civil War. The top is the major events and the bottom is events in Florida. And you have Camp Milton reconstructed with the earthworks after the Battle of Olustee. And then the Maple Leaf was a Union cargo ship, I believe, which struck a mine in the St. Johns River not too far from here. So a lot of Civil War history in this area that is often overlooked. So this is the entrance to Camp Milton. So you see those fortifications over there. Those are recreations, and we're obviously going to go and check those out, and that's a pretty cool visual. But they go into a little detail about life under siege in northern Florida, especially Jacksonville. Now obviously Jacksonville looks a lot different from that. We're several miles west of Jacksonville, and Camp Milton was established by the Confederate forces to help keep the Union forces in Jacksonville and prevent them from branching out. It was first established in 1862 and named after Governor Milton of Florida, and it was in a strategic position. So this was a pretty important position by the Confederates. We're approaching the fortifications here. Again, these are replicas of what some of the fortifications here would have looked like. And we touched on how there was 8,000 Confederate soldiers encamped here. And although by Civil War standards that may not be a large number, but some of those numbers included almost 6,000 infantry, 1,500 cavalry, and 430 pieces of artillery. So again, probably most of this would have been cleared out for a defensive position. You don't want the enemy, when they're attacking your position, to have any cover. So, but you can just imagine 400 pieces of artillery in this general area. I mean, that's a pretty large number. But let's have a closer look at some of these fortifications. Now, when the Confederates first camped here, they constructed over 15,000 feet of earthworks and other field fortifications. So imagine 15,000 feet of these things. That's over 3 miles. It's an insane number. They do have about 700 feet of the original earthworks preserved here, which we're obviously going to see. But again, just wanted to show you the earthworks here. And we're going to go ahead and swing around. Now, if we were assaulting this position, this is what we would see. Again, great concealment. And there's several different types. And you can see how they're all kind of interlocked together. These little holes here allow the defenders to exit in and out rather quickly. This one looks like maybe it would be an artillery position. Usually, I don't know if you can see that space, and then you have that log that would help protect the soldier's head. That one may be an artillery position, and you have more rifle positions here. It's amazing to me how you can use the earth and resources around you and make a very formidable defensive position. Again, as assaulting infantry, this would we would sustain some pretty high casualties, especially if none of this foliage was here to provide cover. We're advancing over open land and right into the teeth of the Confederate Army. Now, luckily, there were no major engagements here at Camp Milton, but right now, just imagine that we're the Union forces. Obviously, I would be marching this way towards these fortifications here. And you can just see, advancing across open land, we'd probably be chewed up, especially in our linear formations. Wouldn't have been good for an attacking force. It's crazy the strong position you can create just by using earth, logs, and the other resources around you. And you see the carnage, how it would unfold later in the war, especially at places like Cold Harbor and Petersburg, where fortifications like this were paramount for the protection of your soldiers. But assaulting this over open ground, we'd probably have no chance. So I'm just making my way through one of the little entrances they have, little sally ports. And now this is behind the fortifications. And look, I want to show you this. So right now I am level with the ground here, and I'm going to step down into this defensive position and just crouch, and you can kind of see I'm completely covered. And when I need to fire, you stand back up, there's your field of fire, and when I need to reload, I hop back down. This is a very formidable position, and again, just used with logs and the earth around them, and you can create a really strong static fortification. You have open fields of fire, your flanks are protected. Wow. And now I'm standing straight up again. So you can just kind of see, digging a little pit here, and kind of the precursor to the modern day bunker, you can say. So I'm just giving you another perspective. You're the Union assaulting force, and I'm a Confederate infantryman, loading my musket behind the wall, popping up, hitting my target, and coming back down. A very, very formidable position. And showing you some of these other positions. Now these probably be for soldiers standing up. Again, these logs provided a safe spot to reload, and once you're ready to reload, you turn and point your rifle, and again, clear fields of fire. Now you can kind of see this position's kind of out of angle, so now you're having interlocking fields of fire, which is extremely deadly for assaulting positions. That's really cool. And this looks like an artillery position. Again, provides ample cover. And here's just the far left end of the defensive line here. Not really sure what this piece would do or what function this would serve. Again, I don't know if this was an elevated platform and soldiers could stand and shoot, but here's another position here. Again, at an angle for interlocking fields of fire. That gentleman on that bicycle stands no chance assaulting this position. And yeah, this is really cool to see, a great visual, and just a testament to the ingenuity that the soldiers of this time had. Now, if you're wondering why there's a gap in the line, and there's another one there, these gaps here would allow soldiers to move in and out of the fortifications way easier than going all the way around the line. Soldiers, light infantry like skirmishers or sharpshooters would position ahead of the line and act like a early warning device for the main body of the line, and hopefully harass the enemy enough to where they don't want to assault the position here. So something that I almost overlooked is this tree has a pretty deep lineage. This is a Battery Park live oak. Now I'm not going to read the whole thing because it'll probably take me a half hour, but when the mortar batteries and artillery positions opened fire on Fort Sumter, it was from Battery Park. And this tree grew from an acorn handpicked from Battery Park live oaks. So this is pretty cool. So this has lineage dating back to the initial shelling on Fort Sumter. That's pretty neat that they have this here. Now this is touching on the third Union invasion into Northeast Florida, and this invasion was significant because it was the first deployment of African American troops in Florida by the federal government. The 33rd United States Colored Troops, formerly known as the 1st South Carolina Colored Infantry, was sent to invade Jacksonville on March 10, 1863. Military records show that many of these soldiers were volunteers from plantations and towns in Northeast Florida. And then you have the 55th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, which was ordered to Jacksonville during the 4th Union occupation. On February 19th, 1864, Union Brigadier General Truman Seymour led 6 companies of the 55th as part of a larger force toward the Battle of Olustee. The 54th Massachusetts, portrayed in the movie Glory, joined forces with the 55th, and actually, the 54th Massachusetts covered the Union retreat from Olustee back to Jacksonville. Oh, hello. So, like we touched on in the beginning of the video, they have almost 700 feet of the original earthworks here, so we must see them. So again, there was no major engagements here at Camp Milton, luckily, because there probably would have been horrendous casualties with those fortifications there. There were a few skirmishes in and around this area, but one conflict that I wanted to touch on was a brief but intense fight between the 1st and 6th Georgia. Like, wait a minute, they're on the same side. Well, that fight I'm referring to is a pine cone war. So I guess things got a little dull here. So soldiers from the 1st and 6th Georgia Regiment decided to forage here, find some pine cones, and they had themselves a little pine cone war, because in Florida it doesn't snow, so it's either rocks or pine cones. But I thought that was pretty neat. And again, here's an example of one of the pine cones that possibly have been thrown at another soldier. But I like stories like that. You know, when you study history, it's really easy to get wrapped up in a certain conflict or an engagement, or you know, the casualties. But stuff like that reminds you that they're just ordinary people like you and I. So I kind of really like that story. So we're heading back on the trail now. Only one here, so it's great. And we're going to check out those earthworks. All right, so we came from that direction, and here's that fork in the road. And I think this is your outer wall of your earthworks here. Pretty hard to see, but let's see if I can get the camera a little lower. You can see the change in the elevation here. That is the outer wall, and luckily they do have some interpretive signage here. All right, bring that into focus. So this is what your basic fortification here would have looked like. So you have your abatis work, which is usually like underbrush and things like that. And here's your skirmishers and your rifle pits. Your palisades act as anti-infantry and cavalry, and your front ditch. And if you're lucky enough to make it all the way here, this is where those bunkers would have been. And again, to give you some perspective, this is where we are on the outer fortifications of Camp Milton. And again, it may be hard, but your outer line, literally right here. Wow, this is really, really cool to see. And I'm hoping that this view, we were just over there at that sign, but I'm hoping this view can offer a little more of a better visual for you. Again, your earthwork is right here, and it drops down. So this would be the outer wall, on the outside of the outer wall here. So this is pretty interesting. This is something I did not know. Apparently, Brigadier General Beauregard designed Camp Milton following the Federal defeat at the Battle of Olustee. The fortifications were meant to protect North Florida from the Union incursion, as well as to draw the enemy out from their Jacksonville stronghold. That's pretty interesting. He was, General Beauregard was known as a defensive fortification guru, so the fact that he designed Camp Milton is a really cool little nugget. So here's a section that I hope the camera's picking up. It looks like it's a pretty good visual, but again, you can see here's your normal terrain, and then you have your outer earthworks here. And here's an example of one of the skirmishes that happened in this area. I don't know if you can see that. On June 2nd, 1864, Confederate Brigadier General James P. Anderson ordered his troops to recapture Camp Milton. A Union withdrawal was ordered, and the Confederate cavalry pursued them to Jacksonville. They engaged the Union column at Sweetwater Branch east of this camp. And here's another. On July 26, 1864, the Confederates permanently evacuated the camp. The Federal troops captured 19 Confederate soldiers and seized flags, muskets, sabers, and other materials before destroying the breastworks here at Camp Milton. And camp of the 9th Mississippi in Pensacola that may have resembled the last Confederate encampment at Camp Milton. So, I don't know if you can see that. This board's pretty weathered, but this is an example of the camp life here. And again, they do a really good job of kind of giving you a layout of the land here, because it is kind of difficult to see. Again, the earthworks are just in front of us, right here, and showing the section that we're currently visiting. Now, something that I'll need clarification on is right here. Camp Milton saw 2 major assaults by Union troops and 1 counterattack by Confederate troops. Now, I couldn't find anything detailing a major assault on this location. Now, I don't know if it's referring to when the camps were abandoned by each side and it was retaken by the opposing force, but something that I do know that happened was Camp Milton was the site of several small picket encounters. Wow, this is pretty cool. So, in the beginning of the video, we saw that live oak from Battery Park in Charleston, or at least from an acorn from Battery Park in Charleston. Well, here's a little garden filled with trees from all over the country. And one that I wanted to point it out to you was this one, the Gettysburg Address honey locust. And this tree grew from a seed handpicked from the Gettysburg Address honey locust about 100 yards from where Lincoln would deliver the famous Gettysburg Address. That is really cool to see. And a neat little touch here. So this is something that's pretty cool, another good visual. This is an example of what is called a campaign bridge. And when a bridge was needed, they would obviously have to use what was around them. So bridges like this were pretty reliable for crossing small streams and other little creeks and things like that. But yeah, this is pretty cool. Again, just using the resources around them, you can overcome some of the terrain features here. Oh, and apparently, when the Confederates retreated, they left some of their supplies behind. All right, so that was cool. I know it may have been hard to see through some of the foliage here, and by the looks of it, these earthworks have taken a beating from Mother Nature. But this place offered a lot of cool visuals. The signage along the nature trail that we're on offered really cool visuals, and I learned a ton. The fortifications out front that we saw earlier in the video, that was really cool. Offered some really great insight as to what some of these fortifications may have looked like. Yeah, Camp Milton Historic Preserve, just outside of Jacksonville. If you're ever in the area, pay this place a visit. You'll definitely learn a thing or two, just like I did. So take care, and we'll catch you on the next one.